Hello. My name is Sydney, and today is November 11th. It's Sunday. It's Veterans Day, so happy Veterans Day to all you veterans out there. I have quite a few in my family. I just drove back from Maine. I was in Maine for about a day. I drove up yesterday to see one of my favorite bands perform in concert, Young the Giant, up in Portland, Maine. It's only a couple hours away from here, and then I drove back down this morning. So it was great, except aside from going up there just to see this concert, I also was hoping to do a bit of writing. I got up there like in the afternoon, so there was time to like say go to a cafe or something, or even before I drove back this morning I did go to a cafe and I was there for like maybe an hour or so. I'm hoping to just get a little bit of writing done. And you'll notice that I keep saying hoping because the thing about hoping is that that's something that you want to do. It's not necessarily the thing that you end up doing. So it is the 11th day of NaNoWriMo. And to be honest with you, I did not set out this month to try to write the 50,000 words. That was not my goal. My goal was just to make some sort of progress on a story. Particularly, my initial plans were to try to make progress on Pitchfork Book 2. And then I think my last video, which came out a couple weeks ago, by the time you're seeing this, I said that I was going to try to write Stormcloud. Also in that video, I said that this weekend I was going to be doing a 24-hour write-a-thon. But to be honest, it's hard to do a 24-hour write-a-thon when you don't know what you're writing. Which is the problem that I have continued to face ever since I decided to do NaNoWriMo this year. Again, still putting pressure on myself. It's really hard not to. I did sort of think that I was making progress in this not putting pressure on myself thing just by deciding to, instead of trying to write Pitchfork Book 2, instead of trying to write Stormcloud Book 2, I'm just going to write whatever the heck I feel like writing in the moment. And I did try this out a bit in, I think it was like the end of June into July. So for Camp NaNoWriMo, I tried to do this as well, but I ended up just kind of sticking with Pitchfork revisions and revising that, and that actually worked out pretty well. But and then this month came around, and I was like, okay, you know, a few days ago, I was like, okay, I'm just going to write whatever the heck I want. And that worked for like a day or two because I started working on my story, The Nefarious Kind. I wrote a couple of chapters for that, or not even a couple of short stories for that. Or rather, I finished one and then wrote a completely new one and then started the beginning of the next one. But I couldn't quite see where it was going, which is interesting because I'm pantsing that story. So, like, I'm writing it, I'm thinking of it, I'm writing it as I think of it, kind of, you know, but I couldn't see where that one was going, and it was kind of hard for me to figure out how to get to the next point. But yeah, so that worked for a couple of days, but then I just can't help but think about Pitchfork Book 2 and Stormcloud Book 2 and how neither of these are stories that I need to be working on right now, so it's not like I'm rushing toward a deadline or anything. I just want to be working on something. And though I keep saying or keep thinking to myself that I'll just work on whatever the heck I want to work on as long as I'm writing, I still want to be working on one project right now. Like, I don't really feel like jumping around a lot. I don't know about, I can't really speak for the beginning of my writing, like the first few years of when I started writing, but like the past few years I've gotten into this thing where it's good for me to just pick a project and stick with it until I get to a good stopping point. Then I can switch to something else. It's been hard for me to jump back and forth between different things just because it makes me feel like I'm not really making any progress, and it's hard for me to kind of get immersed in a story if I keep jumping, like as soon as I get immersed, or you know, or I jump away to the next story before I can get immersed, and so I'm not really getting immersed. I'm not really sure where I am in any of these stories, and it's hard to kind of make progress that way. Or should I say it's darn near impossible. In the beginning of my writing career, I was thinking about that today because I was scrolling through some of my really old stories all the way back from like 2009, and which is about when I started writing, because that was after I finished reading the Twilight series. I had so many different types of stories, like just looking at the different ideas that I had, and of course none of these really ever went anywhere. They were like, okay, write the beginning couple of chapters and then, ooh, new idea, write the beginning couple of chapters of that. But there was such this pure innocence and just having fun mentality to that I admire of my younger self, that I could just go and write the idea without any qualms about, oh, this won't be any good, or oh, this is not publishable, or oh, you know, whatever it is that I'm having doubts about. Like, I didn't have those back then, and I miss that. I miss being able to just like go and do the thing, just write the thing that I'm feeling super passionate about without having any worries about how it will end up turning out, because I was just having fun. I was only writing for myself. I basically just wanted to sit down with you guys today and talk through, think out loud, basically try to figure out why exactly it is that I'm having so much trouble focusing on one idea lately. Because I don't think it's just an issue of, oh, I'm worried about it not turning out right. I think there has to be something more. Like, I got to push past that excuse and get to like the root of this issue. And so that's kind of what I'm trying to do now. We'll see if we get anywhere. Let's see. So I guess I should back up a little bit. I'm a writer who's working on more than one story. The past few months of this has been kind of difficult. Actually, I think that kind of correlated with my move here. I wonder what that's about. Because before I came here, I was pretty good at sticking to one project until I reached a good stopping point. But it's always, but for the past couple years before I moved here, it was always like, okay, work on the story, see it through, and then I'll switch to the next one. And it was very, very consistent. Like, I'll work on this story for a few months, and I'll work on that story for a few months. And again, I was kind of just working in circles. Like, I would just write something, then I would find ways to try to make it better, and I would go back and kind of start from scratch or revise or something. But I'm basically just rewriting and revising the same drafts over and over again. The first books of both of these Pitchfork and Stormcloud series. It wasn't until maybe this year where both of the first books of those series got to a point where I guess they're not necessarily as good as they're going to get, because there's definitely probably ways to be revised. But then there's my problem. I'm always looking for a new way to revise these stories as opposed to just moving on or querying or something like that. But yeah, so it wasn't probably until like earlier this year where I got to a point where, okay, now I have to move on to book 2 of these series, or now I have to query, or now I have to show it to beta readers, or now I just have to basically move on. And so I don't know if it's just because I moved here and it's a different location and I feel a different way about living here than I did when I lived in Virginia. But I think all these things are coming together in a really interesting way that has made it kind of difficult for me to, I guess, have any sort of writing commitment that I can stick to. I tend to be the kind of writer who, like, I'll make a plan, and I can usually make a plan for like this month and the next month, more or less, but I'm always willing to let that change, because sometimes you just, you make a plan to write this book, but no, now you're really feeling this book. But that's kind of changed a bit, I guess. And forgive me if I start rambling here. Again, like I said, I'm thinking out loud. I've got some tea here. It's Earl Grey, and it's in my Disney World mug, which I got in Disney World. Yeah, it's like a bunch of Disney characters. Anyway, let me think. So kind of switching tracks here, but I think it still relates. It still relates under this umbrella topic of not knowing what the heck I'm doing. Is that there are a couple of things that I have done in the past that have been really helpful for me to get back into writing. Things that kind of, like, I guess I've heard the term writing triggers. I don't remember where it was that I heard that, but having these writing triggers that, you do this thing to get you in the mood to write. For me, it's like listening to the playlist for that I created for that story, because I hear these songs and I start thinking about the scenes that they relate to, or I start thinking about scenes that I haven't written yet. So I listen to these songs and I start to envision my story, and that's been really good. Another thing that I do, sorry, that was like a little indigestion burp kind of thing, whatever. Anyway, another thing that I do is, like, reading or watching TV, like stories, like looking at these stories, enjoying these stories, and then trying to be like, okay, like I had this creative writing teacher not in high school, in college. So we would read a book and and then we'd come back to class and we would discuss it. And one of the questions she would always ask is, okay, what can we take from this story? What can we steal to use in our own stories? Like different ideas, different concepts that you can try out in your own creative writing to see if it works or doesn't work for you. And so I like to read books and I like to watch things on TV and be like, okay, I like the way that this romance unfolds. I can use that aspect, or I like this element of world building. And that often helps to kind of trigger ideas of things I can use in my stories. And I used to say, usually if I'm not reading, then I'm writing. And usually if I'm not writing as much, then I'm reading. And then at least I'm kind of balancing the well of creativity. There's input and there's output. As opposed to just input, input, input. I have to, like, at some point I have to have an output, if that makes sense. So like the input is like, okay, reading these stories, listening to this music, and like kind of seeing other people's forms of creativity and letting ideas kind of boil or simmer in the back of my mind. And at some point I'll have all these ideas and I just need to write it down. So that becomes the output, is when I start writing. And I think right now, if input and output is this, I think right now I'm sort of in a valley. Maybe I've reached the bottom of my creative well, and it's now time for me to get some input. Okay, reading things, watching things, and kind of absorbing other forms of creativity to kind of refill my well. That could be one thing that's sort of making me feel very stagnant right now, and maybe leading to me not making any progress with my writing, is because I'm feeling like I'm forcing myself to do something that I'm not quite ready to do, which just has poor timing with NaNoWriMo. So there's the feeling of pressure with NaNoWriMo, of feeling like I have to do some writing right now. There's maybe the fact that my creative well is empty, and I need to take a few days or a few weeks or whatever, however long it takes, to refill my well with different forms of creativity. Maybe that's what it is. I think that actually might be what it is. It's the pressure and the low creative well. I just finished watching, like literally 5 minutes ago, I just finished watching the last episode of Sabrina the Teenage Witch, which I've been more or less binging the past week. I just went to Young the Giant concert yesterday and listened to their music, and I love their music so much. I just finished the audiobook of Warcross by Marie Lu, which was way better than I was expecting. Like, that was such a good story. And also, I'm halfway through reading the second book in the Golden Compass series, The Subtle Knife. I actually read this book like 12 years ago or something when the movie came out, and then 2 years ago for Thanksgiving I finally picked up the first book and I read it and I really liked it, and now I'm halfway through rereading the second one because I forgot almost everything that happened, and then I can finally go and read the third one and see what happens in that. Long story short, I am currently doing things, I think, to refill my creative well long before I even realized that that's probably what I need to do. So I don't know if I should take a break from writing. I probably should. Although that feels kind of dangerous to say, you know, but you can't always be outputting without filling your well. In case you didn't know this about me, I'm a very indecisive person, so this is kind of like the closest I've come to making any sort of concrete decision about my writing in a very long time. I think that's enough of me rambling today about how I've been feeling creative writing wise. Yeah, I feel good in general. It's just, you know, I feel like there's a wall in my mind right now. Like, I don't know if it's an oncoming headache or something. And I think the wall is like, you know, somewhere between my left brain and my right brain, where the left brain is like, take a break, Cindy, stop writing, refill your creative well. But the right brain is like, no, I gotta write, you know. So maybe this wall is starting to come down now that I've talked about this stuff. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching this video today and hearing me ramble about my thoughts and trying to work through this issue I've been having. If any of you guys have had any sort of issue like this, you know, let me know. Misery loves company, so they say. And yeah, thank you guys so much for watching this video. Give this video a like, hit subscribe, and I will see you next time. In this light and this darkness, so carefully